You are not confused about life. You are confused about how you are looking at it. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change what is happening around them, believing that if the situation improves, their inner state will finally settle. They wait for better circumstances, better people, better timing, but very few stop to question the lens through which they are seeing their life. And this is where the real shift begins, because life itself does not come with meaning attached. Meaning is something you place upon it. The same event can break one person and strengthen another. The event did not decide that, the mind did. From the moment you wake up, perception is already working. Before you speak, before you act, before you even feel, your mind interprets. It labels experiences as good or bad, success or failure, opportunity or threat. Most of this happens unconsciously, shaped by past experiences, conditioning, and repeated habits of thought. If you are not aware of this process, you begin to live on autopilot, reacting rather than choosing. You think you are responding to life, but in truth, you are responding to your interpretation of life. When perception remains unexamined, it becomes a prison. You start to believe your thoughts are facts. You assume your emotional reactions are accurate reflections of reality. If something feels heavy, you conclude that life is heavy. If something feels unfair, you conclude that life is against you. Over time, these conclusions harden into identity. You stop saying, "This is difficult," and start saying, "This is who I am." This is how a temporary experience turns into a permanent limitation. But the moment you begin to observe how you see, rather than what you see, space opens up. You realize that perception can be trained. Just as the body can be conditioned through repetition, the mind can be educated through awareness. This is not about positive thinking or denial. It is about clarity, seeing things as they are without unnecessary distortion. When you change perception, you do not deny pain, effort, or challenge. You simply stop adding unnecessary suffering on top of them. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Suffering begins when resistance replaces understanding. When you ask, "Why me?" instead of "What now?" you close yourself off from growth. Consider failure. To an untrained perception, failure is proof of inadequacy. To a trained perception, failure is information. One interpretation leads to withdrawal and self-doubt. The other leads to adjustment and progress. Life did not change, only the lens did. And that lens determines whether you move forward or remain stuck. This is why education of the mind is foundational. Before discipline, before responsibility, before growth, there must be awareness. You cannot take responsibility for something you are not conscious of. You cannot change a habit you do not see. Perception is the doorway through which all transformation enters. When you begin to refine how you see your life, you stop fighting reality. You stop wasting energy wishing things were different. Instead, you meet each moment with precision. You respond rather than react. And in that response, power is restored. You may not control everything that happens, but you always control how you relate to it. This is where freedom begins, not in changing your life, but in changing how you see it. Once perception becomes clear, the next step is unavoidable: responsibility. Many people misunderstand this word. They hear responsibility and think of blame, pressure, or guilt. But responsibility is not about accusing yourself. It is about reclaiming power. The moment you take responsibility for your life, even for the parts that were not your fault, you stop being a victim of circumstance and start becoming an active participant in your own development. As long as responsibility is avoided, power is outsourced. When you blame your parents, your past, society, luck, or other people, you may feel justified, but you also become passive. Your progress becomes dependent on something outside of you changing first. And that is a dangerous position, because you have no control over the world, but you do have control over your response to it. Taking responsibility does not mean denying injustice or difficulty. It means recognizing a simple truth. Regardless of how something began, you are the one who must deal with its consequences. No one else can do your inner work. No one else can discipline your habits, regulate your emotions, or strengthen your mind for you. Waiting for someone else to fix your life is the quiet decision to remain exactly where you are. This is why responsibility is empowering. The moment you say, "This is mine to handle," something shifts internally. You stop asking who caused the problem and start asking what must be done. Energy that was previously spent on complaining or resisting now becomes available for action. Even small actions, taken consistently, begin to rebuild self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Avoiding responsibility often feels easier in the short term. It protects the ego. It gives you stories that explain why you are stuck. But over time, these stories become heavy. They drain motivation. They weaken discipline. A person who believes life is unfair to them eventually stops trying. A person who believes they have influence, even in difficulty, keeps moving. Responsibility also sharpens awareness. When you stop pointing outward, you start looking inward. You notice patterns. You see how your reactions contribute to repeated outcomes. You recognize that many obstacles are not external barriers, but internal habits left unexamined. This realization can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that learning is happening. Education of the self requires honesty, not harshness, not self-attack, but clear seeing. When you take responsibility, you do not say, "I am wrong." You say, "I can improve." This shifts the focus from judgment to growth. Mistakes become feedback. Weaknesses become training points. Life turns into a practice, not a punishment. And something subtle begins to change. When you hold yourself responsible, you naturally become less reactive to others. You stop expecting people to meet your emotional needs. You stop waiting for approval or validation. You become internally anchored. From this place, discipline becomes possible, not as force but as alignment. True responsibility is quiet. It does not announce itself. It shows up in daily choices, in how you speak, how you act, how you recover when you fall short. It is the decision to stand upright in your own life, without excuses and without resentment. When you take responsibility, life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something you shape. When responsibility is accepted, discomfort becomes unavoidable. And this is where many people turn back, not because they are incapable, but because they misunderstand discomfort. They assume it is a sign that something is wrong, that they are on the wrong path, or that life is pushing them away. But discomfort is not a punishment. It is a signal. It appears whenever growth is required. Every time you step beyond what is familiar, the mind resists. It prefers what it already knows, even if what it knows is limiting. This resistance shows up as fear, doubt, irritation, or the urge to escape. Most people respond automatically. They distract themselves, rationalize, or retreat. In doing so, they miss the lesson hidden inside the discomfort. Discomfort is the body and mind adjusting to new demands. Just as muscles feel strain when they grow stronger, the nervous system feels unease when it is being trained. If you avoid this sensation, you remain exactly as you are. Comfort maintains the current version of you. Discomfort is what shapes the next one. This is why progress often feels heavy at first. When you begin to discipline your habits, wake up earlier, sit in silence, or confront your patterns honestly, the initial experience is not peace, it is resistance. The mind questions the effort. It brings up excuses. It reminds you of easier options. This is not failure, this is the training phase. Those who grow do not eliminate discomfort, they change their relationship with it. Instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" they ask, "What is this developing in me?" This shift transforms discomfort from an enemy into a guide. You stop running from it and start learning from it. Consider moments of emotional discomfort, criticism, rejection, or failure. These moments reveal where attachment exists. They show you where identity is tied to outcome or approval. If you avoid these experiences, the attachment remains hidden. If you stay present, you gain insight. And insight creates freedom. Discomfort also teaches patience. Growth does not respond to urgency. You cannot force clarity, strength, or confidence into existence. These qualities are built through repeated exposure to challenge. Each time you remain steady in discomfort, without reacting impulsively, you train stability. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Many people wait to feel ready before taking action. But readiness is not a prerequisite for growth. Action creates readiness. Discomfort is often the sign that you are early in the process, not that you are incapable. Those who wait for comfort before moving rarely move at all. This is why discipline and discomfort are closely linked. Discipline is not about controlling life. It is about staying engaged when things are unpleasant but necessary. It is the ability to remain consistent even when motivation fades. Discomfort tests this consistency. It asks whether your commitment is dependent on feeling good or grounded in purpose. When you begin to see discomfort as a teacher, your perception of life shifts. Again, challenges stop feeling personal. You stop interpreting difficulty as rejection. Instead, you recognize it as refinement. Life is not trying to break you. It is trying to shape you. And the more willingly you meet discomfort, the less power it has over you. What you face consciously no longer controls you unconsciously. Discomfort does not come to stop you, it comes to strengthen you. Once discomfort is understood and no longer avoided, discipline begins to take a new shape. Most people think discipline is about forcing themselves to do things they dislike. They associate it with punishment, rigidity, or control. But true discipline is none of these. True discipline is an expression of self-respect. It is the decision to treat your time, energy, and potential with care. Discipline starts with small, ordinary actions. How you wake up, how you breathe when stressed, how you speak when emotions rise. These moments seem insignificant, but they are where your life is quietly shaped. When your actions are inconsistent, your mind becomes unstable. When your actions are aligned, your mind settles. Discipline creates structure, and structure creates freedom. Many people wait for motivation to appear before they act. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes based on mood, environment, and comfort. Discipline does not depend on motivation. It depends on commitment. Commitment means you act according to your values, not your feelings. This is how discipline builds inner strength. Every disciplined action sends a message to the mind, you can trust me. Over time, this trust compounds. Confidence is not built through words or affirmations. It is built through kept promises. When you say you will do something and you follow through, even in small ways, your nervous system stabilizes. You become grounded. Discipline also simplifies life. When your routines are clear, decision fatigue decreases. You no longer negotiate with yourself endlessly. You know when to train, when to rest, when to focus, and when to be still. This clarity conserves mental energy and reduces inner conflict. Without discipline, potential remains scattered. You may have insight, intelligence, and ambition, but without structure, these qualities cannot mature. Discipline is the container that allows growth to take form. It is not about doing more, it is about doing what matters consistently. Self-respect grows naturally from this process. When you take care of your body, regulate your emotions, and honor your commitments, you stop seeking validation externally. You no longer need approval to feel worthy. Your actions speak internally. You know who you are because you live it daily. Discipline also changes how you relate to failure. When discipline is present, failure is no longer an identity. It is an event. You adjust, refine, and continue. There is no drama, no collapse. Just learning. This emotional stability is one of discipline's greatest gifts. Importantly, discipline must be sustainable. Excessive force leads to burnout. Discipline guided by awareness adapts. It recognizes limits and respects recovery. This balance keeps the practice alive over time. The goal is not perfection, but continuity. As discipline becomes part of your life, you notice something subtle. The mind becomes quieter. Reactions soften. You respond with intention rather than impulse. Life feels less chaotic, not because challenges disappear, but because you are no longer internally fragmented. This is why discipline is not restriction. It is alignment. It aligns action with intention, effort with purpose, and life with values. Discipline is how you prove to yourself that you are worth your own effort. As discipline brings structure and steadiness, something else becomes possible. Silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of unnecessary inner movement. Most people rarely experience this kind of silence because their attention is constantly pulled outward, or trapped in continuous thinking. The mind is always reacting, planning, remembering, judging. Over time, this noise becomes so familiar that it feels normal. But noise is not clarity. Silence is not something you create by force. It appears when you stop feeding distraction, when you slow the breath, soften the body, and allow thoughts to come and go without chasing them. The mind begins to settle. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Many people avoid silence because it reveals what has been ignored. Restlessness, unresolved emotions, and hidden fears rise to the surface. This is not a problem. This is the beginning of understanding. When the mind is noisy, it distorts perception. Decisions are rushed. Emotions feel overwhelming. Small problems appear large. In silence, these distortions soften. You begin to see situations as they are, not as your emotions paint them. This clarity is not intellectual. It is felt. You sense when to act and when to wait. You speak with less effort and more precision. Silence teaches you to listen, not only to others, but to yourself. You start noticing subtle signals, tension in the body, shifts in breath, changes in mood. These signals are always present, but they are ignored when the mind is loud. Awareness of them allows regulation. Instead of being pulled by emotion, you remain centered. This is why silence is essential for emotional stability. When you can sit with stillness, you learn that thoughts are temporary. They arise, peak, and dissolve. You are not required to act on every thought. This realization alone changes how you live. You gain distance from impulsive reactions. You become less controlled by fear and desire. Silence also reveals intention. When external influences quiet down, you recognize what actually matters to you. Many people live according to borrowed goals, expectations, and comparisons. In silence, these layers fall away. What remains is simple, clear, honest. From this place, decisions align naturally with values. The practice of silence does not remove challenges. It changes how you meet them. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. In that pause, choice appears. Choice is freedom. Without pause, there is only habit. Silence also deepens discipline. When the mind is calm, discipline no longer feels heavy. You are not fighting yourself. Actions flow with less resistance. Focus becomes natural. This is why silence is not separate from action. It prepares action. Many believe they do not have time for silence. In truth, silence saves time. It reduces confusion, conflict, and unnecessary effort. A few moments of stillness can prevent hours of reactive behavior. As silence becomes familiar, you carry it into movement, conversation, and work. You remain present even in activity. This is inner stability. From here, life feels less chaotic and more intentional. Silence does not make you passive, it makes you precise. In stillness, truth becomes impossible to ignore. When silence becomes part of your life, you begin to notice a pattern that was always there but rarely seen. The state of your outer world reflects the state of your inner world, not in a mystical or instant way, but in a practical, observable way. how you think, how you breathe, how you react, and how you act repeatedly creates structure. And structure over time becomes your life. If the mind is scattered, life feels scattered. Tasks pile up, relationships feel tense, decisions feel heavy. Not because the world is attacking you, but because there is no inner order to meet what is happening. When the mind lacks direction, energy leaks everywhere. Effort increases, results decrease, and frustration grows. Inner order begins with awareness. When you observe your habits honestly, you see how small inconsistencies create large consequences. Skipping rest leads to irritability. Avoiding difficult conversations leads to distance. Ignoring discipline leads to chaos. Life is precise. It responds to patterns, not intentions. When inner order is cultivated, the outer world begins to stabilize. You manage your time better because your attention is not constantly pulled. You communicate more clearly because emotions are regulated. You choose environments that support your growth because you recognize what drains you. None of this is dramatic, it is gradual, but it is reliable. This is why blaming external circumstances eventually feels empty. You realize that even when conditions improve, instability remains if the inner structure is weak. And when inner structure is strong, even difficult conditions become manageable. Strength is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of order. Inner order also brings simplicity. You stop complicating your life with unnecessary commitments, explanations, and emotional reactions. You choose fewer things and do them well. This simplicity creates space. Space allows focus. Focus allows mastery. Relationships also change when you are internally aligned. You no longer expect others to regulate your emotions. You show up grounded. Conflicts lose intensity. Boundaries become clear without aggression. Respect grows naturally, not because you demand it, but because your presence is stable. Work changes as well. Effort becomes intentional. You move with clarity rather than urgency. Mistakes are addressed quickly because the ego is not protecting an image. Learning accelerates because attention is not divided. Importantly, inner order is maintained through daily practice, not occasional insight. Awareness must be renewed. Discipline must be maintained. Silence must be revisited. This is not a one-time realization. It is a way of living. Life will continue to challenge you. Pressure will return. Emotions will rise. But when inner order exists, these challenges no longer dismantle you. They refine you. You adapt without losing center. This is when life stops feeling random. You begin to see cause and effect clearly. You understand that your choices, repeated daily, are shaping your reality. This understanding is not heavy, it is grounding. You no longer wait for life to become calm before you act with clarity. You act with clarity, and life responds. When inner order is established, the world no longer controls you, it reflects you.